Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back for another episode. This is Frank Agin, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Thank you to those who have referred this podcast to others. I appreciate you talking it up. And thank you to those who are now subscribed. If you don't know, when you do subscribe, and please do subscribe, when you subscribe, you ensure that you get every episode as they are released. And finally, thanks to those who have reached out with questions, comments, encouragement, referrals to potential guests, and so on. Today is a special episode. It's a special episode for a couple of reasons. The first reason is this is episode 100. We released our first episode September 4th, 2018. This is being released on September 3rd, 2019. We got 100 episodes in within a year. Didn't think it was possible, really wasn't looking to do it. It just sort of happened that way. The second reason this is a special episode is that I was able to secure a really great guest for today. And our guest for the 100th episode is Bob Burg. Now, if you don't know who Bob Burg is, you need to get out of hiding, get within social media, go to the bookstore, get in tune with life, crawl out from underneath that rock. I say that kiddingly. But let me give you a rundown on Bob. Bob Burg is a sought-after speaker at company leadership and sales conferences, sharing his platform with everyone from today's business leaders, broadcast personalities. He's even given his program to a U.S. president. Bob is the author of a number of books on sales, marketing, and influence, with the total number of sales of well over 1 million copies for all his books. His book, The Go-Giver, which is the one that I know him best for. Anybody I talk to talks to me about The Go-Giver. I've read The Go-Giver. But he was the co-author with John David Mann. That book itself has sold over 850,000 copies and has been translated into 28 different languages. Now, from what I understand, Bob and John have another parable, their newest parable in the Go-Giver series. It's called The Go-Giver Influencer. But in addition, Bob is an advocate and supporter and defender of the free enterprise system. He's a firm believer that the amount of money one makes is directly proportional to how many people they serve. And I'm sure we'll talk about that. Finally, Bob is someone you might term as an unapologetic animal fanatic and is a past member of the board of directors of Furry Friends Adoption Clinic and Ranch, which is located in his hometown of Jupiter, Florida. Again with us today for the 100th episode of the Networking RX podcast, author, speaker, influencer, Bob Burg. Welcome, Bob.
Hey, Frank, it's great to be with you. Congratulations on your 100th episode. That's fantastic. It's quite a milestone.
Well, it is, and it all happened within a year. I didn't intend for it to happen in a year,
Wow.
But just a lot of great people to interview, and you're the perfect capstone to the first 100.
Well, I'm honored to be numero 100.
Yeah, there we go. Jumping into this, I read up a little bit before getting onto this interview, and I have the Go-Giver book. You signed it, great. It's a great book. But in reading up, I see references that you've made and other people have made to the Go-Giver way, many people. A lot of people I know talk about the Go-Giver book. Have you read the Go-Giver book? Have you read this? And they're all really entrepreneurial. Mm-hmm. But I get the sense from what I'm reading up and seeing the Go-Giver way that you look at being a Go-Giver as something that's much bigger, much broader than entrepreneurship. Fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, it is only in the sense that we say it's kind of who you are, and because it's who you are, it's what you do. It's sort of the same as when Dr. Stephen Covey with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People talked about the difference between being principle-based and technique-based. Techniques are important, okay, but the principles override.
Sure.
right? The
Sure.
techniques, the very principles, those are the premise. That's the premise from which the techniques. And so when we say being a go-giver, we simply mean, and really the premise, if you will, of the story is that shifting your focus, and this is really the key, shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, it simply means constantly and consistently providing value to others, and understanding that doing so is not only a pleasant way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well.
Right. Now, when you say value, we talk, when I work with groups and talk with groups on networking, I'll use the term giving, and that tends to trip people up. And I like the term value. How do you define adding value?
Sure. Well, it's understanding the difference first between price and value, because price is a dollar amount. It's a dollar figure. It's finite. It simply is what it is. Value, on the other hand, is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, what have you, that brings so much worth or value to someone that they will willingly exchange, let's say in this case, their money for this thing and feel great about it.
Right.
And so what we need to understand is that value is always in the eyes of the beholder. It's not what we think is valuable about what we do or what someone else should think is valuable about what we do. It's understanding that it's about them. This is why when we talk about selling and we say, well, what really is selling? Very easy to define. Selling is simply discovering what the other person wants, needs, desires, and helping them to get it. And that's really the whole principle behind understanding that you're in this to provide value to others, and that money is simply an echo of value. It's
Right.
the thunder, if you will, to value's lightning, which means nothing more than the focus must be on bringing value to another human being, to the marketplace. Okay, and it starts there. It starts with the value. The money you receive is simply a very natural result of the value you've provided others.
Okay. Gotcha. Now, 5 principles to the go-giver.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'll throw this question at you to give you an opportunity to kind of touch on each one of them. Value being first. What do you see as the most important, or do you see one as the most important?
They're pretty interchangeable. I mean, the first one, the law of value, is the foundational principle, but they're all just as important. The laws themselves are the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity. And you need to use all 5 of them together in conjunction, not 1, 2, 3, or even 4 of them, but all 5 of them in order to really have the effect and attain the kind of success that we want people to attain. The law of value says your true worth, in the business sense, of course, your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. This can sound counterintuitive when you first hear it, right? Give more in value than I take in payment? Sounds like a recipe for bankruptcy. No, of course not. What it means is that the use value that you're providing another human being is, in their mind, remember, the mind of the beholder, the eyes of the beholder, is worth more to them than what they're paying. Example, if you're an accountant, and or let's say you hire an accountant to do your taxes, and this accountant charges you $1,000, it's round figure, $1,000. That's their price or their fee, but it's their price, $1,000. But what value do they give you in exchange? Well, through their knowledge of their craft, their years of study, their desire to learn about your business and to help you, achieve the results you want. Well, they're able to save you $5,000 in taxes. They also save you countless hours of time, and they provide you and your family with the security and the peace of mind of knowing it was done correctly. So what we see this person's done is they've given you well over $5,000 in use value in exchange for $1,000 price or cash value. They gave you more in value than they took in payment. So you feel great about it.
Sure.
And they made a very healthy profit, right? Because in their opinion, it was very well where it was profitable to them to sell their services or lend their services for $1,000. In fact, in a free market-based exchange, and when I say free market, I simply mean no one is forced to do business with anyone else. In a free market-based exchange, there are always two profits: the buyer profits and the seller profits, because each of them come away better off afterwards than they were before. That's basically the law of value.
Okay.
Now, the next one's the law of compensation. This says your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. So where law number one says to give more in value than you take in payment, law number two tells us that the more people whose lives you touch with the exceptional value you provide, the more money with which you'll be rewarded. Your accountant in the first example did a great job of giving you more in value than he took in payment. If he's your accountant, you probably feel really good about him. You would do business with him again, and not just because you're a referral expert anyway, but because it's very natural, you would probably refer him to many other people. And his other clients feel the same way. So this accountant is very quickly amassing what we call an army of personal walking ambassadors. And as he continues to add that kind of exceptional value to the lives of more and more people, his income will continue to grow and grow. That's basically law number two. Law number three is the law of influence. And this one says your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. Now, again, to many people, not to you, but to many people, this would sound counterintuitive, counterproductive at best, and maybe even downright Pollyanna-ish at worst, right? And yet, hey, we know the greatest leaders, top influencers, most profitable salespeople, this is simply how they run their lives and conduct their businesses. They're always looking for ways to make other people's lives better. They're thinking of the other person, putting their interests first. Now, let me clarify and qualify this. When we say place other people's interests first, we certainly don't mean you should be anyone's doormat or a martyr. Not at all. Or self-sacrificial. Absolutely not. It's simply understanding, as Joe, the protege, learned from several of the mentors in the story, and I've been saying this for 30 years since I've been doing this, and I've put this phrase in every single book I've ever written, and that is all the golden rule of business is that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And there's simply no faster, more powerful, or more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you from others than by moving from an I focus or me focus to what we call an other focus, looking for ways to make your win all about the other person's win. That's the law of influence. Law number four, the law of authenticity, says the most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. In the story, one of the mentors, Deborah, shared a lesson she learned, and that is all the skills in the world, the sales skills, technical skills, people skills, as important as they are, and indeed they are very important, they're also all for naught if you don't come at it from your true, authentic core. When you do, however, people feel good about you. They feel safe with you. They feel comfortable with you. They know you. They love you. They trust you. They're much more likely to want to buy from you, be in relationship with you, and refer you to others. And then law number five is the law of receptivity. And if law number one, the law of value, is the foundational principle, law number five is the one that kind of brings it all home. The law of receptivity says, the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving.
Interesting.
And this means nothing more that in the same way we breathe out and we breathe in, right? It's not one or the other. We do both. Giving and receiving, despite the horrible messages we receive from the world around us about money and about prosperity, giving and receiving are not opposite concepts. They're simply two sides of the very same coin, and they work best in tandem. The focus is on the giving, of course, the giving of value to everyone, and then you've got to be able to allow yourself to receive.
Of those five, now you've already established, hey, these are kind of, I don't want to say interchangeable, but they're all essential.
Holistic, yeah, they're all essential.
which one do you see as people having the most trouble with?
That's actually an easy one. It's the law of receptivity.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, we get more emails, and I get more people at my live events coming up to me to tell me about that. And it's actually kind of easy to understand once you think about it. Frank, the world around us just provides us not with mixed messages about money, but with very negative messages about money. And, people grow up. If you ever heard the question growing up, hey, when you get older, do you want to be wealthy or happy? Right? Well, what's the implied premise in that it can only be one or the other? Well, basically, we want to be happy. So if being wealthy is going to keep us from doing that, then unconsciously, we're not going to do it. When you read stories and hear stories about, Enron and Tyco and the bank that was selling false, accounts, and the car that where they were falsifying their emissions result. Well, that's hard. These wealthy people are horrible in their. That's a very small portion of it. You don't hear. The headline that doesn't sell is corporate CEO treats people fairly. Which is usually the case, and especially the more free market we live in, again, where force is not involved and special favors from government and cronyism is not part of it. The only way you can make a lot of money is by providing exceptional value to the lives of a lot of people. But again, we hear these messages from the time we're born. We see them on TV. Look at every movie that you see, every top-selling movie. My friend Randy Gage, who has the Randy Gage's Prosperity blog, he's one of the top speakers on prosperity and authors. People like David Nagel and Bob Burg, they'll all tell you that you watch any big movie, and there's typically two types of people who are portrayed. There are the good people who are typically portrayed as being poor but happy, right?
Yep.
I remember, if you remember, and Randy points this out in one of his great vignettes in the first Spider-Man movie years and years ago, Uncle Ben says to Peter, well, Peter, we may not be rich, but at least we're honest. I mean, what kind of horrible message is that you're one or the other? How about you're rich and you're honest? But anyway, these are the messages that we receive all the time. And that can mess with a person's unconscious. That's the dangerous part of it. It's not conscious, it's unconscious. Right. And that's why, if you in your unconscious mind associate being wealthy with being evil, or being unlikable, you're going to do things to keep yourself from getting there. So that's why I suggest reading the authors on prosperity, reading their blogs, listening to their podcast, reading their books, listening to them speak, because we get the garbage naturally, but we need to consciously put the good stuff about prosperity into our minds.
Well, let's shift gears here quickly. I mean, the Go Giver book is really it's a book on mentorship.
In a sense, yeah.
Yeah. What's the best way to find a mentor?
Well, I mean, we can find a mentor anywhere practically, and I think mentorship is important. Having a good mentor can cut your learning curve down, by years. But I think a lot of people kind of go about it in an incorrect way, or an counterproductive way. Let's say, they'll find someone who they really admire, and they'll just reach out to the person and say, "Hey, would you be my mentor?" Yeah. And, it's sort of like asking somebody to get married before asking them out on a date. A mentor-protege relationship is just that. It's a relationship, and it builds over time. But you can pretty much reach out to anyone and just say, and whether you're sending this through an email or on the phone or in person, and just to say, I'm just starting in business. And I'd love to ask you a couple of very specific questions. Of course, I know you're busy, and if it's just something that's either not appropriate or you don't have the time, of course, that's totally understandable. Okay, but when you do that, you've come across in a way that you're framing it that you don't feel entitled to their advice. You're grateful, and you're not asking to pick their brain or to take their. You're asking if you could ask a couple of very specific questions, and most people. Not all, but it doesn't have to be all. There are different people out there, but most people will say, sure, go right ahead. And you ask those couple of questions. Now, make sure you do your research. Don't ask a question that you could have easily discovered by going to their website or going to doing a search, right? But ask a couple of good questions. And then that day, write and send a handwritten personalized thank you note, letting them know how much you appreciate their time and their wisdom. You look forward to implementing it, and you'll let them know how, you'll check back and let them know how things are going. You could also, a nice touch is to find out their favorite charity, which you should be able to find out right online, and make a small, it doesn't have to be big, but just make a small donation in their name. It'll get back to that person. You're not doing it to kiss up or anything, but again, so they know that you respect the process, that you understand that they're bringing you great value through doing this. And then, so what you might do a few weeks later, you maybe follow up, let them know how things are going, ask another question, and start to, and eventually, if a mentor-protege relationship is supposed to be ongoing and take place, it will. If not, it won't. But, that's basically the best way to do it.
Well, what you're describing there, you can have, it doesn't have to be an official mentorship relationship.
Exactly.
And I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up, because a lot of people don't have that kind of time to let somebody latch onto them ongoing. Right. But yeah, occasionally ask a question. That's, I guess the question that's really kind of percolating in my head is, I mean, you obviously walk the talk.
Oh, thank you.
And I say that for our listeners, because I have known Bob and known of Bob 20 some years. It's been a long time. But I heard you speak at Salt Fork State Park, which is in Eastern Ohio. How Eve Peterson got you there to go there, I don't know, but that's a whole nother conversation. But when did the epiphany come about this? Because I don't think we're, the things that the go-givers about and what, true networkers talk about, a lot of times those things aren't natural. We're humans, and we're kind of a survival mode sort of thing. And this kind of flies in the face of that. So when was that epiphany? How did that come about?
So there was actually somewhat of an epiphany. There really was. Now, I was very fortunate to be brought up by parents who not only were wonderful people, but really embodied the whole go-giver spirit. And I wouldn't have thought of that name, go-giver, at that time, of course, but I got to see by example that that's a good way to live your life. But it's nothing that I codified until, later on. But when I had gone from broadcasting to sales, I'd been in sales for a couple of years. I'd read and studied and learned, and I was doing pretty well, but not nearly as well as I could have been doing. I was sort of like Joe in the story, in the go-giver. And I remember coming back to the office one day after really blowing a sale. And I was sitting down and I guess looking disgusted, and I was disgusted at myself. And there was an older guy there who, and I say older because this is 37, 38 years ago, means he's my age now, right? What my age is now, older guy or decrepit guy, older guy. But anyway, but he was one of these guys. He didn't say a lot, but when he said something, it was always profound. And I think he saw me as sort of a Joe, right? As a guy who had a lot of potential, but wasn't focusing in the right place. And he said to me, "Burg, can I give you some advice?" And I said, "Sure, please do." And he said, "If you want to make a lot of money in business," actually said, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, he said, "don't have making money as the target. The target is serving others."
Yeah.
Now, when you hit the target, you'll get a reward, and that reward will come in the form of money. But never forget, he said, the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. Yeah. It's not the target itself. Your target is serving others.
It's interesting you say that, because I had this conversation last night with my wife. We were talking about like Facebook and LinkedIn, and I said those came about because they were trying to provide a service and became very lucrative as a result, hitting their target, as you put it. That's a great way of putting it. And there's so many wannabes that have come along who want to make a lot of money mimicking a Facebook or a
Right.
LinkedIn and fail because they're focused on making money and not
Right.
hitting the target. So
Exactly. And Frank, here's what it really comes down to in a sense. Nobody, and I say this often when I speak at a sales conference, and I say it jokingly, not in a dogmatic fashion, but I'll say, nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet, right? They're not going to buy from you because you need the money or have a mortgage payment. And they're not even going to buy from you because you're a really nice person. They're going to buy from you only because they believe that they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And that's fine. That's the only reason anyone should buy from you or from me or from anyone else, because they believe they'll be better off. So what does that tell us, the salesperson, the entrepreneur? It says we better have our focus in the right place, on them.
Right. Okay, Bob, to wrap this up, I'm going to interject this. Everybody out there, if you haven't read The Go-Giver, you need to go buy it.
Oh, thank you.
Well, it's easy. In this day and age, it's easy, right? Back there was a time you had to get in the car and go to the bookstore and find it. Here, you just go on Amazon, right? It's life.
Right.
If you don't have it, you can have it on its way in the next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Beyond that, Bob, how could people help you? What would be a good referral for you, or what?
Really, it's just people are so good about spreading the word about the book. It's close to 900,000 copies sold now, and the Go-Giver series itself is well over 1 million, because we've got 4 books in the series. So we always appreciate when they read the book and it touches them in some way. They find it to be of value and they want to share the idea with others. Yeah, that's really, that's all we can ask. And we always feel great to know that people are doing that. And we know that's why the book is sold so much. It's not because of John or me personally. It's all the ambassadors out there who of the message itself.
Now, if somebody listening here today say, I need to get him speaking at my conference, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
The best thing would be to go to the main website, which is Burg, BURG.com. There's also a preview video up there. They can contact us through that. Someone who's interested in just the books, say they could go to thegogiver.com and get a chapter or 2 of the book to see if they like it first. Then they can always click through.
Well, Bob, thank you very, very much for being on the 100th, being on the podcast.
I was going to say, I'm honored by that. And again, I congratulate you. That's a terrific landmark. Good luck on your next 100.
Thank you. Maybe we'll get you back on somewhere along the way.
Have a great day.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connections. All rights reserved.